Hello and welcome to my birth series. I call it The Politics of Birth, and it will be done in several episodes. This is the introductory episode, and I will talk about what I will be talking about, why I will be talking about it, the big inspiration and foundational figures behind what I'm talking about, and why it matters for everybody, including you men. I know a lot of my audience is male, and I don't want you to think that this doesn't concern you. These are your children, your sister's children, your mother's children. It affects you. It takes two to make a child, and the father should be aware of what's going on in the medical system and what's being done to women and children. And guess what? You have complete power and authority to delineate those things towards better outcomes. And I will also be talking about how incredibly easy that is to do. So bear with me. I'm very pregnant, so I am out of breath. I will not be speaking as fast as I usually can, but let's get going. So the first thing I want to say is birth and how you come into this life as a baby and how your mother births you affects society to an insane extent. It is one of the most important and vital things that you can do and mess up. And it's very easy to mess up, and it's very easy for people to use this significant passage into the new world for the baby to completely mess up the trajectory of their life. The way that women and babies and men and the husband are abused, fear-mongered, raped, hurt, cut, unnecessarily operated on, groomed, brainwashed, and conditioned during the pregnancy, even pre-pregnancy, and then the birth process itself and the postpartum is so traumatizing for the majority of families these days that it causes women to not want to have any more kids, to repress a lot of very negative emotions, to feel powerless in all aspects of their life postpartum. And for the baby, it initiates them into the world in a very violent and negative way. And I know that sounds like a lot, and maybe it sounds overblown to a lot of you, and it did to me, and it took me many years to process this truth, but it is the truth. And I'm hoping that my audience is open enough to listen and think about the topics I will be discussing, because you've been here all along. You've been here through, distrusting the financial system, the governing system, the pharmaceutical system, food systems, etc. We've covered a lot on this channel, so I think I have a really good set of ears here. So stay with me. Men, stay with me. You will be getting your own video on your role to play, but the information generally covered here is for everybody. I now want to list all the things that I've been talking about since I was a teenager to illustrate that even someone like me, who is incredibly counterculture, incredibly disagreeable, has full capacity and ability to say no to things and to people, sees right through most negative authoritarian structures and talks about them openly. Even someone with these traits and this background was conditioned and groomed successfully to accept many of the completely absurd and demonic things that happen to women during pregnancy and birth. And even though intuitively I know something was wrong, I still submitted. So I'm still kind of ashamed of that. Uh, and the point being is not to, tell you how much of a insightful guru I am for knowing all these other things. It's to actually point out that I'm pretty retarded. Like, if I saw through all of these lies, why did I still submit to the obstetric system? Okay, the first kind of official counterculture thing that I did publicly was back in 2010, where I started a website called goingoffthepill.org. And it was, as far as I know, because I did a bunch of research and I couldn't find anything else, the first website recommending women to get off hormonal birth control because it is a chemical hijacker of your brain and body. And I gave alternate things that women could do in terms of, cycle tracking and all that good stuff, and how to rebalance one's hormones, etc. So I did that in 2010. Even earlier than that, in high school, I was always pro eating meat and full animal fats, and veganism was really big back then. I was always anti sunscreen. I always thought it was poison. Then in 2013, I started kind of a libertarian Twitter, and my handle right off the bat was I write state with a capital S because it has become our God. And that kind of became a really big theme after Jordan Peterson, because the whole thing was that we worship these other authoritarian systems and elevate them to like the apotheosis of God, because we don't have a true God anymore. There's a really cool synchronicity I want to mention with a woman named Yolanda Norris Clark, who has built a foundation for all of the things that I'm talking about right now, having to do with birth, over the last 20 years of her life. And so in her book, Portal, which I will link below, she talks about how the medical system isn't broken. It never worked. And that's literally what I was saying about the state back in like 2014 when I went to CPAC and I interviewed a bunch of people and I said, the system isn't broken. The system never worked. So I thought that was such a accurate synchronicity. So I wanted to mention that. I'll talk about her at the end of the video. Okay, then I did my YouTube channel. I, of course, did gun rights from the perspective of the ultimate women's rights and equalizer between men and women. I did one of the first video series as a woman on YouTube against modern day feminism. I did a lot of financial freedom content having to do with Bitcoin, a lot of ANCAP content, a lot of male-female relations content, anti-promiscuity, pornification issues. I remember before trad stuff was popular, seeing it on 4chan and making a video about it and laughing why are 4chaners talking about trad wives. And I thought it was really ironic, but also, pointing out that traditionalism does have a place in society and can be very beneficial. Yeah, I mean, that's a lot, like freedom of speech in Canada issues. I don't know. There's more. I don't want to keep rattling on about it. So yeah, again, I say all this stuff to reiterate that someone who has no problem saying no, no problem being disagreeable, no problem speaking out, no problem being against mainstream culture in every single way possible, I was still conditioned and brainwashed by the obstetric and hospital systems against my own body when it came to birth. Maybe I'll give you two really apparent examples of the stupidity, the like absolute stupidity that people buy into when it comes to babies and birth. And these two things I believed. That babies' heads can be too big to exit the mother. As though there's thousands of deer and monkeys and whales and other animals around the world just found dead in the field and in the ocean with a baby stuck in their pelvic area. Just think about the absurdity of that. Why would this be true for humans and not any other living thing ever? What? It's like, need I say more? There's another thing that they tell you. Oh, thank goodness we C-sectioned you. The cord was wrapped all around the baby and their neck. Your baby would have surely died. So when the baby is inside of you, it breathes through the blood in the cord. You're sharing blood and oxygenated blood. The baby is not breathing through their lungs or throat or diaphragm. So why would a cord being wrapped around its neck matter? The only breathing dangers of a baby being birthed is if the cord is pinched. Why? Because that is how they breathe, through their cord. If the cord is wrapped around anywhere in the baby, as long as the cord is not pinched, which it doesn't get pinched from being wrapped around, the baby can breathe. It's just like the most retarded brainwashing ever. Like, it's not even good brainwashing. And do obstetric nurses and doctors actually believe this? You know what you do when you birth a baby with the cord wrapped around its body and neck? You unwrap the cord and you wait for the baby to take its first breath. So those are just two examples of like complete insane things that people believe. And yeah, I believe them too. So sad. This stuff, even if it's not intended to subvert and fearmonger and, pin us against our own bodies and functions and abilities, even if it's not done purposefully, it is done. It is absolutely detrimental to the way women see themselves, see the birth process, and the way that they feel capable and incapable about the most basic function of life. Now it's time to do my shout outs, because this work has been laid out by other women. And I can't name everyone. I'm just going to name the two women that have affected me the most. So, first of all, Yolanda Norris Clark, who has 20 or more years of educational and physical work in this field. She's amazing. I will link all of her stuff below. She has an amazing book on the subject. And another synchronicity between her and I is the anti-victimhood narrative. I did a video years and years ago called Everything is Your Own Fault. Maybe a more aggro version of her messaging, but basically it is in your power to have the life that you want and the outcomes that you want, and you have to choose them, and you're not a victim. And yes, things can be done to you, of course, but the way that you come out of those events and move forward and the choices you make, that's on you, and you have the power to make things better for yourself, for your children, for your husband, for your family, for society in general. So just like with the devil, you have to consent to his evil. The devil can't do anything to you without your consent, and neither can a doctor. These things have to be consensual. You have to step into them and submit. Another woman to check out is Emily Saldea, and she runs the Free Birth podcast, and I'll also link that below. And she interviews women and their birth stories, specifically birth stories outside of the medical system. No midwives, no doctors, just the mother and the baby and maybe some family. And they're wonderful. It gives you a complete alternate perspective of what this process can be like. I also want to quickly mention 3 personal friends that helped shape my opinions and insights on the subject. One of them is public. Her name is Lisa Freeman. You guys may remember her from Anarcho stuff, and she's wonderful. And she had a free birth like over 5 years ago, and I thought it was really cool. That was before the term was popular. She didn't use that term, so yeah, shout out to Lisa Freeman. My second friend, who is not public, her name starts with an N, and she always wanted Yolanda and my paths to cross because she thought we had a lot in common in terms of our philosophical leanings and approaches to life and systems. And I've been talking to her about all of this throughout. So thank you. You know who you are. And my other friend, her name starts with an A, and she's the wife of a pretty cool Bitcoiner, and she's just as cool herself. And she had a free birth, and she was privy to all this knowledge before I was, and I kind of heard about it from the sidelines, and that stuff matters. It matters to encounter these women in these situations, these people who do things differently, because it opens up your perspective. I want to end on the main theme of this video series, and it's this. I want you to imagine that your first encounter with the world is a peaceful, kind, gentle, and maybe even slow emergence into the world, into your mother's or father's arms, onto her breast to have your first meal after you voluntarily chose to take your first breath. And that's where you stay, in your mother's arms, for the next several months. Instead of being induced out of your mother, ripped out of your mother, cut out of your mother, only to be held by plastic-covered hands of a stranger, only to be immediately cut from your life source, which takes away 1/3 of your blood oxygen and blood volume, to be given eye drops that burn your eyeballs, to be given a jab or 2 or 3 immediately, to be thrust into a chaotic environment of medical beeping, cold surfaces, harsh lights, being held in weird positions, having tubes shoved down your face, usually unnecessarily. If you're a boy, having your most gentle and precious area mutilated, and often not being given to your mother for hours and hours for various reasons. So just imagine the former scenario and what that would do for people's well-being, for everyone involved in the system and the process. Just imagine the positive outcomes of a birth that isn't completely scary, traumatic, rapey, intense, abusive, and in its execution, a way that conditions to make people submit for the rest of their life. Yeah, so I wish you all the best, and I hope you tune in to the rest of the series.